They were everywhere. Lumbering shadows in the day, hungry nightmares at night. The city, once a beacon of life, was now a graveyard. The stench of decay hung heavy in the air, a grim reminder of the horrors that had unfolded. It hadn't been long ago that the streets buzzed with life. Now, the only sounds were the moans of the undead and the clatter of the wind whistling through shattered windows. The world had changed, twisted into something monstrous, something terrifying, and there was no going back. Survival was a moment-to-moment struggle. The infected, driven by a primal hunger, lurked in every shadow. Their eyes, once filled with life, were now vacant, replaced by an insatiable hunger. They were relentless, their decaying bodies driven by a single horrifying purpose: to feed. The living were outnumbered, outmatched. Hope, once a flickering flame, was slowly being extinguished under the weight of despair. Yet, somewhere in the ruins of the city, amidst the carnage and the fear, the will to survive flickered on. It began subtly, a whisper of something wrong in the news cycle. A strange illness, they called it, a few isolated cases, easily contained. But the whispers grew louder, the cases more frequent. Then came the images, gruesome and undeniable. The dead were walking. Panic spread like wildfire, hospitals overflowed, morgues reached capacity. The virus, a silent predator, moved through the population with terrifying speed. No one was immune. Doctors, scientists, politicians all fell victim to the relentless advance of the undead. The infected were no longer strangers in news reports. They were friends, neighbours, family. The line between the living and the undead blurred. The world plunged into a nightmare. The fabric of society, already stretched thin, ripped apart. The world watched in horror as the virus spread from city to city, country to country, leaving a trail of death and destruction in its wake. The age of man was coming to an end, consumed by a tide of shambling, hungry corpses, and there was nowhere left to run. The first attack was swift, brutal, and unexpected. One moment, life was normal, the next, chaos reigned. The infected, driven by a primal hunger, descended upon the unsuspecting populace like a plague of locusts. Their moans, a chorus of the damned, echoed through the streets. Those who survived the initial onslaught did so through sheer luck or desperate acts of courage. They barricaded themselves in their homes, armed with whatever they could find, praying for a miracle. But the dead were relentless, their hunger insatiable. The streets, once bustling with life, were now killing fields. The air was thick with the smell of blood and decay, the silence punctuated by the screams of the living and the moans of the dead. The world as they knew it was gone, replaced by a horrifying new reality. There was no escape from the nightmare. The infected were everywhere, their numbers growing with each passing hour. They swarmed through cities and towns, leaving behind them a trail of devastation and despair. Humanity, caught unprepared, was on the brink of extinction. John and Sarah, their faces grim with fear and exhaustion, huddled in the darkness of the abandoned supermarket. They had been scavenging for supplies, their hearts pounding with every creak and groan of the decaying structure. The weight of their situation, the sheer hopelessness of it all, threatened to crush them. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the silence. John gripped his makeshift weapon, his knuckles white. Sarah's eyes widened in terror, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a sob. They both knew what that scream meant. They were not alone. The sound of shuffling feet, slow and deliberate, drew closer. John peered through a crack in the boarded-up window, his breath catching in his throat. A horde of infected, drawn by the scream, pressed against the entrance, their eyes burning with a cold, hungry light. They were trapped with nowhere left to run.